I think that we can start. Yeah, great. So, welcome, guys. Thank you for being here. Adi Gazit-Fletcher, VP Marketing at Wiser AI. One promise before we start. This is not a Wiser demo. I know that you registered for via Wiser, but still, we are not here to show you any slides. That's not what today is all about. Here's why we are here. Freight is in the middle of an AI buying boom, right? It's a lot of chaos. We are listening it all the time. We have like AI buzzwords. Your CEO, your board, your customers, they're all asking the same questions. What's our AI play? The honest answer, no one is telling you. Most of these AI projects are sitting on a broken data. Okay. The teams running them don't know it yet. The title today, Garbage In, Magic Out, is a flashy. We're here to break it apart and show you what to do instead. And I brought the right person to do it with. Wow, I'm super proud and happy to have you, Mike. Nearly 30 years inside Logitech, Merckx, Intera, Wistek Global, Project 44, and so on, all senior data rules, right? And you build data partnership with the world biggest ocean carriers and advise on the design choices that makes or break AI in logistic. Mike spoke at TPM 26 earlier this year, and today he's an independent advisor. Mike, welcome. Welcome. I'm super happy to have you with all this audience with us today.
No, well, thank you very much for having me and excited to be here.
Yeah, so maybe we can start with the first question. Okay. Where is the industry getting AI wrong right now? What's being sold that doesn't match what teams are actually getting?
It's a great question because unfortunately, we've seen this happen before. Using blockchain as the example, unfortunately, what's being sold usually is it's going to change the world. It's going to automate everything. It's going to, change our jobs forever. And as we saw previously, it really didn't meet the hype, say, with blockchain. But with I think we're using it on a daily basis. I mean, most of us here on this call use it exactly, to help with their emails, to help, almost like a Googling 2.0 in order to try to manage your searches better. So since it's more mainstream, I think this one has a bit more of an impact, a bit more of a adoption. So when it comes to companies wanting to make sure that they're not missing out, of course, they're listening to the you can automate everything and your competition is way ahead of you. So unfortunately, I think there is a bit of hype there. So I think we always have to take a step back to say, what is the foundation like? And should we move forward? And are we going to get the benefits without actually making any changes?
That's beautiful. So I want to promise something to our audience. So, three quick things before we dive in. First, we are going to record it. You'll get the replay in your inbox, I believe, tomorrow morning. Forward it to whoever isn't able to join. Chat is open the all way through. It's an open conversation. Drop questions, reaction, war stories, anything. I'll be watching. And the third one, in the last 15 minutes, this is yours, okay? Mike and I will save a real Q&A for the end, so bring the hard question about AI and data and anything. Mike is not here to be a diplomatic, right? He's here to be useful, so let's get into it. So, Mike, the title of the session is Garbage In, Magic Out. I know from my academic study is garbage in like garbage out. So that's flashy. We're here to dismantle. Walk us through it. Why cannot AI fix broken data, and what are the foundation folders should actually be looking at?
So when we look at um, sort of AI, we are looking at a a foundation um, of data, people, and processes, right? So if you look at it from a data standpoint, AI isn't going to necessarily fix it. AI, when used correctly, can help retrieve events, can help follow up. Like so, there are use cases where I won't say AI can't help with data at all. But if data is missing fundamentally, if data is trapped in silos, there needs to be action taken in order to make sure that you have all of the appropriate data points, that you have context, right? So AI itself isn't going to fix this. It can be useful, but if you're looking for an end result, which is, say, process automation, you need to make sure that all of your data is set up in a way that enables that to be successful in order to get the outcome that you're looking for.
Yeah.
So if you're looking, at from a conceptual standpoint, I guess we can get into the, um, you know, uh, accuracy, completeness, and timeliness, if I'm not jumping too far ahead. So when you look at your actual data foundation, right, you look at accuracy, and accuracy is, does the data that you are bringing into this equation actually match what it is, the data point that you're actually looking for? And I'll give an example because it's a tough one. So let's just say in the ocean world, a carrier might say that vessel arrival equals when it enters the port and terminal area. The terminal might say vessel arrival is actually when it berths at the terminal itself. And these can be two completely different time frames, right? And two completely different moves. Same thing when you're like gating in or gating out a container. You can end up using geofences, and there are a lot of great companies today with IoT products, and you marry that with a geofence, and then all of a sudden someone considers that it's arrived. What does arrived at the terminal actually mean? Does it mean that it's gated into the terminal, or does it mean that it's in the terminal area and might be sitting in a line for 2 hours, or they've stopped at the side, of the road within that geofence? So we just need to be careful to make sure that when we talk accuracy, that we're matching the data points to make sure that they all mean the same thing. We move on to completeness. Now, from a completeness standpoint, it's pretty easy. Is the event missing or do you have the event, right? And this is different than accuracy because accuracy, you might say two events were different, so therefore one was missing, but this is just purely missing. And what happens is when you say have an ocean carrier, right, they might get data upstream. They might get data from a trucker. They might get data from a port or terminal. If that data is either not sent or an EDI message fails, or whatever the case may be, you then don't have the data point you're expecting. And as a consequence of that, you might not take action, right? Because it's missing, and it actually has happened and you should have. So again, in a process automation standpoint, you didn't move that forward, whereas you were supposed to. And then from a timeliness standpoint, we can also look to see, or we can refer to this as latency, right? The events happened. How long does it actually take you to get notified or provided with that data point? Depending on SLAs at ports or terminals, depending on, whether it's a very, very manual process where somebody literally with a clipboard is noting these things down versus an automated gate when you're bringing in containers, this timing can vary. Also, how it's sent, like I said earlier with, say, EDI, it might be batched. Therefore, the consequence of it not being timely, maybe you were going to take action and the action is now delayed. And an example where that might be a problem would be, say, you have an appointment to drop off a container, right? And you didn't know that it actually left the port or terminal, and now it's arrived, and you didn't even expect that was going to happen. Or you go to pick up a container, you think the vessel has discharged, but it actually has not yet. And now your trucker has a dry run and you have a consequence of that as well. So again, accuracy, completeness, timeliness are really, factors as to whether you have the data set needed in order to start doing things like applying AI or process automation, et cetera.
Yeah. What brings me to the next question. You work both sides, right? Primary carrier data at Maersk and the aggregator and visibility layer at other companies like Project 44 and so on. So talk to us about the trade-off. Like, when is direct carrier API ADT the gold standard, and when does an aggregator actually make sense?
So this one, I'll give a few examples after I just explained. From a primary standpoint, it's the originator of the data point. So, well, that can be a trucker dropping off a container at a facility. That can be a porter terminal saying the vessel is arrived and we're starting to discharge containers, right? Other data points may actually be created by a carrier. It could be, that the booking's been confirmed, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical move, right? These are primary sources. And we look to primary sources to say they more than likely are the most accurate and the most timely, right? When we go back to the ACT framework. So in those cases, you want to try to get as much of your data from a primary source as possible. Now, having done that in my career, I also have done, as you've correctly said, some of the aggregation. And it can be sort of, looked down on slightly sometimes because you say, well, you're not getting it from the primary source. But there are use cases where actually aggregators can help, especially with completeness. So I'll give an example for this. You're an ocean carrier, you've got a data set, you're providing it downstream to your customer. Well, you may not have the terminal data, you may not have the inland trucking data, right?
Correct.
And in order to complete that data set, either that actor has to go and collect this information, or you can look to an aggregator to say, well, actually, this aggregator can make my data set more complete, can actually normalize it and help, in instances with, say, accuracy, at least from a naming convention standpoint and making sure that it's apples and apples and apples. So again, when you're looking to see where are you getting your data from, I would say primary sources are where you should look first. And then if you start to apply the framework and see gaps, in any of the three areas that we've mentioned, then you start to look and say, will an aggregator actually help me, with either timeliness or accuracy or completeness? And I think that is the differentiation between the two. Both have their time and place.
Yeah. Valid point. So if I need you to give me like one moment, like one project, one customer, one decision where the data foundation either made the AI outcome work or where it's broke and nobody saw it's coming. Names hidden, but make it real.
So I worked for a company a number of years back that was helping actually global forwarders with process automation, right? So very much what you would do in an AI scenario today. And the the automation was set up, and unfortunately, some of the data that was coming in was inaccurate data, and you could say that because of the amount of reliance on this automation, there were some downstream impacts when this event happened. So rather than a few hours of cost savings or time savings from taking a manual, I think it was that goods have arrived, so goods should be available. So not only did that trigger some downstream actions from a process standpoint, it actually sent emails automatically to customers. And this particular global freight forwarder spent days going back into their system of record, making manual changes now with a lot of staff that wouldn't normally be applied to that. And then have to go to the customers and apologize and say, I know you received this email, but it actually didn't happen. So it's just a cautionary tale to say, if you're not filtering or you're not ensuring that data in, right, is what it's supposed to be, the automation can actually make the situation worse rather than better.
Yeah. Wow, what a story. Okay. You've described the shift from data entry to data stewardship. Make it concentrate for us. Like, what does the data actually do on Monday morning that an Excel operation person doesn't? And what should leaders look for when they are hiring now in 2026?
So I think there's a differentiation between, so if we look at it from what does a leader need to look at, right? So
Right.
what are your workers doing? Are they super experienced in a tool like Excel? And it's
Right.
their skills in that particular tool that are, creating the value, right? Versus they have the knowledge, they have the context, right, of what's going on and understanding the process flow and understanding, the data and really understanding when things work and don't work. They're talking to the customers and they know even though the process is supposed to work 100% of the time, this 10%, they're going to get a call, right? So if you look at the first group, they're what you can probably expect to take out of this equation with AI, right? You're going to, end up with that manual data entry job, or that job manipulating Excel, that really are probably targeted for reductions in staffing. But if you look at those individuals who have the context and you look at those individuals who really understand the data and the process and what works and what doesn't, these are the ones that you want to start to look to apply back to that framework to say, okay, do we have the most accurate and complete and timely data? If we don't, where, like when, in what instances? It is across the board, or is it only with detention and demurrage, or is it only with another particular process? So I think that from a leadership standpoint, it's important to really look to not just say, I want, to be able to do more business with less frontline staff. Okay, but what are these frontline staff doing? Which are the ones that really need to be elevated and repurposed in order to apply them so that you have that foundation set versus the jobs that unfortunately, are going to be impacted, as you become more efficient from applying AI.
Mhm. Okay. So the last decade story, it was about visibility. We all bought it, we all installed it. The next decade is about, like, from what I'm hearing, is turning visibility into action, right? Quoting faster, pricing smarter, moving freight before competitors do. Okay, we have like chasing our tail because our competitors are like they're all around us. What does the transition actually looks like for folders on this call? Like, if they are here to hear us, like, what is this transition is all about?
So again, once you start to work on that foundation and make sure that is solid as possible, it'll never be 100%, but as solid as possible. Then you can start to look at things like automation, and I'll give a visibility example. I've worked for a few visibility companies. Um, People liken it to say dots on a map, right? Where is my container right now? And that was super important during COVID. Everything was an unexpected mess, I guess you would call it, where,
Okay.
is my container even at the terminal? Like, where is everything? Is it on the water? Did it make the ship? Like, these were super important at the time. And now that things have settled down a bit, not saying there is zero disruption, but it's almost table stakes now that whether you're a forwarder or whether you're an aggregator or whether you're, a visibility company, you have this capability now, right? I think it's been elevated. And what can you do from here? Right? What differentiates you? Because, all right, great, you know where your containers are, you know where your inventory is, where your goods are. Now you can start to automate based on that, right? So if I know, and you can look at it from an exception standpoint, or you can look at it from a, sort of helping with the financial transaction flow. If you can take data and start to say, well, if I'm certain that this container has loaded on the vessel, then now I can trigger some financial transaction. Maybe it's payment, maybe it's invoicing, maybe it's that it's discharge, maybe that you. And again, it's not necessarily a new concept. It's more, this is what we're starting to move towards, is taking manual processes and
Right.
continuing to automate them, but in a much richer way with AI than you were. But again, need the solid foundation. Examples say for quoting. I know because part of my family also works in the industry, and they told me that it was actually taking 48 hours to receive a quote back from the particular forwarders that she works with, and that disappointed me. I thought it was actually starting to be better than that. But how do you automate that, right? That isn't just something that again, magic. You can automate it. You need the right data sources, you need the right data, you need the right context, you need to make sure that it's accurate, you need to make sure that you have all of complete all of the surcharges that you need. So again, you start to get into that, where what are the players that are going to be able to assist me in getting, the accurate data, and then how can I automate processes based on the fact that I trust my foundation. So those are just two quick examples.
Yeah, 44 hours. I'm sorry to hear that. This is really disappointing. Why we advisor can do it in seconds, but this is for another story. I feel that the audience are nodding with their heads. It's like they know all of this. They listen, they are coming to webinars, but they are stuck on step zero. Like I'm thinking about not the 3 years transformation now, like one concentrate move they should make in the next 30 days. Like, let's make it simple. You mentioned about the data foundation. So give us like I don't know, like the one advice that you can give these folders that are nodding, they understand, they know that the train is already like out there, what they can do.
I would say pick one process, right?
Right.
Whether that's, exception handling, whether that's quitting, whatever that particular process is, and then go backwards. Stop looking forward. Stop looking to say, which vendor is going to promise me, the best outcome. Now you can keep an outcome in mind, and actually, I think that's important. Pick an outcome and a process, but don't worry about the technology yet. Go back,
Right.
go backwards, and ask those questions of your staff, and don't take, a fluffy answer that is just going to be, you know, is the data that we're going to use in this process, right, to test it out to see if we're actually ready, is how solid is this foundation, right? And where are the cracks in this foundation? And really press for an honest answer, because if not, then what's going to happen is you're going to start, you know, expecting outcomes that are just not possible, right? And of course, that disappoints everyone in the process, makes people frustrated, every step in that equation. So I would say pick that one process and outcome, and then backtrack internally, internal focus, before you start, talking to external vendors and getting too far ahead of yourselves.
Wow, that's incredible. So, Mike, again, thank you. It's I must admit there aren't many people in this industry who speak this honestly about where the data foundation are and are, and everyone on this call just got a 30-year shortcut. Seriously. Three things that I'm taking from this, and I think that there are the line between the further will lead the next decades on the ones who want, is the one that what we mentioned about AI, that it's not a project. The data underneath it's accuracy, completeness, timeliness, the three pillars that you mentioned and walk us through. This is like really, this is a game changer. If your AI roadmap doesn't lead with those, you are decorating a broken foundation. This is for the audience. And the second, it's the primary data is worth what it costs. Aggregators are smart in the right situation, and we are as well, like I said it clearly, but the gold standard is going to the source, and the folders who lead it are the ones building primary connection now, either themselves or through a partner, or does it from them. That's the build versus by choice. And the third point that you mentioned, it's the rule itself. Hasn't changed. We are not hiring someone who's good with Excel, okay, anymore. We are hiring data stewards that shift as implication for who you hire, who you promote, who you're back. So if I need to ask you, and you mentioned it before, but if you would like to elaborate more on that, like one word for you, if someone here that like every executive, like if there are executive on this call, should start from today, what it would be like the one advice. Actually, you mentioned it before, but if you would like to have one more sentence about that, that would be lovely.
Again, it is super important to not be dazzled by, what is being sold to you,
Yeah.
without going back and looking at the foundation and looking at the three pillars and saying, where are we? Because that's how you can set up yourself for success. Realistic time frames, realistic ROI measurements, and really, it really all just goes back. And it's not a new concept. It's just the fear of missing out really makes it so that you feel like you're getting pushed by your customers, by your
Right.
board, do we need to do this yesterday? Take that step back, take that breath, and just look internally as to what are you trying to accomplish, and do you have the people, the processes, and the data to be able to accomplish it.
And I would say even the technology, a quick word from my side. Like, because some of you actually came through Wiser today, this conversation is not theoretical for us. We sit on the rate and quoting layer for international forwarders. We connect to primary sources, carrier terminals, so you don't have to build all those connections yourself. That's the build versus buy choice Mike mentioned. If anything Mike said made you want to see what the tool looks like inside a real quoting workflow, the link is in a chat. I will share it with you. And of course, I can give you like 15, 20 minutes of walkthrough of the product. One more thing, Mike, for anyone who wants to follow up on you with you, where is the place to find you?
Well, the great question. Without a doubt, it's LinkedIn. So if you have any questions about what I've said today, want to have a chat because you're trying to go through this process and you're unsure where to start, please just feel free to reach out.
Yeah. So, guys, this is like now it's your call to ask any questions that you have. There is a Q&A here on the chat. If you would like to do the chat, this is fine, but I'm looking to get your questions. And I see that they are coming. So, you know what? This is the first question. If you were a CFO evaluating an AI investment in freight, what's the ROI math you'd run? Just
So
one.
yeah, again, it's a very good one. And I think it goes back to a lot of what I'm saying. And I hope I'm not sounding like a broken record. Really, before you determine what it is you're going to get as a return on your investment, have you set yourself up for success, right? Because before you can start to measure that, and before you can start to really understand, if I'm going to spend X, what am I going to get in return? You have to have that foundation set, because if not, it won't matter how much effort you put into the equation itself, right? It's unfortunately it'll be the garbage in, garbage out concept all over again, or expecting the magic out. You can't expect magic in this equation, especially as a CFO. You have to really understand: are we set up for success? Therefore, are we going to meet the time frames, for getting our return on this investment? So again, it's a bit less of an equation and a bit more making sure that the inputs to the equation are actually accurate, and that they'll hold in terms of being an input.
I believe that there are a lot of executives here on the call since the questions are really related to KPIs and metrics. One of them was here. What's the one metric every commercial leader in freight should be tracking weekly that almost nobody is?
Again, I think if you go back to some of your pillars, I think, is your inputs, are what you're expecting, your data inputs that you're putting into the tool that you're paying for, that your CFO is going to measure out you on, right? How is that? And I think probably the one that I find the biggest would probably be your timeliness. Are you receiving the data that you're supposed to receiving, with 2 minutes of latency, or 2 hours of latency, or in the case of manual quotes, 2 days of latency, right? It doesn't even need to be a data point. It could be, the rate. It could be, a booking confirmation, whatever the case may be. It doesn't need to be a physical move. I tend to relate to that a bit too much sometimes. So I would measure your latency to see, the data that I'm putting in, maybe it's complete. Maybe I'm not missing anything, right? And maybe it's accurate. I'm not, it's not apples and oranges. But if it's 2 days delayed, or if it's 1 day delayed, what is that costing you? What is that costing you in an ocean world on detention and demurrage charges, on customer churn, right? On lost, opportunities for bookings. These are super important and should be tracked. So I would take that as probably the number one measurement. You can apply it where you think your pain points are, as to your latency or your timeliness of what you're receiving from your external partners.
And where do you see EDI in 5 years? Dead, alive, or transformed?
That's a great question. There are use cases for EDI. EDI has been around for quite some time now, and a lot of the industry still relies on it. I think there are great use cases for APIs. Again, when you need a bit quicker, a lot of EDI is batched. So if you need, a quick rate, or you're expecting to place a booking, you get an immediate answer, right? Not it goes into somebody else's system and someone manually manipulates it, and then it triggers an EDI message back the next day, right? Like those are the use cases we should be looking at replacing EDI with APIs. But it's not across the board. So do I think in 5 years we'll have EDI? Absolutely. But for some use cases, it's more costly. It is definitely provides less timeliness. So those are the ones where I would look to selectively work with your trading partners to see which are the ones that if I rely on EDI and that's the reason why I'm measuring this latency or issues with timeliness, then look to see if you can replace one with the other.
Very nice. Okay, maybe we can save time for the audience here since we don't have any other questions. So what can I say? Thank you. To everyone watching, by the way, tomorrow morning, as mentioned before, three things will hit your inbox: the full recording, sending it to the person you want to have this conversation with, a one-pager summary of my key arguments, useful, okay, very useful to your follow conversation. If you would like to talk with our team about what data done right looks like in your operation, there will be a direct booking link in there too. And of course, this is an optional, no pressure at all. But mostly my advice to you, and I believe that Mike's thinks the same, go act on this. Like the folders who turn what Mike's just said into something on Monday morning, even tomorrow, are the ones we'll be talking about 3 years from now. Mike, thank you. Super, super appreciate your time and your wisdom here and insights. And of course, thanks to everyone.
Adi,
And
thanks for having me.
yeah, of course, anytime. So thank you guys and have a great one. Bye bye.